47 days, 16 hours, and approximately 2,000 minutes of security footage. That's how precisely I've documented the moment reality began fragmenting in the digital realm. My name is Thaddeus, and I need you to understand something before we proceed. I am not the unreliable narrator you might expect. I work as a systems analyst for a private security firm in downtown Portland. For the past 12 years, I've been installing and maintaining surveillance systems for residential complexes, corporate buildings, and commercial properties. My job involves optimizing data streams, calibrating motion detection algorithms, and identifying anomalous behavioral patterns within terabytes of digital recordings. When I tell you that what I discovered in the security footage of that apartment complex in Southeast Portland defies every rational framework I've spent over a decade perfecting, I'm speaking from a position of technical expertise, from a position of digital certainty. The collapse began on March 8th, the exact day our company lost its largest contract. They called it budget restructuring, but the real reason was my inability to maintain professional reliability during client presentations due to panic attacks I'd been experiencing. The divorce proceedings with my wife and the ongoing custody battle for my son had severely compromised my concentration abilities. But that wasn't the core issue. The real problem was the detoxification process I was undergoing after a 2-year methamphetamine addiction. I had completed the rehabilitation program at a local treatment center, managed to stay clean for 8 months, but the stress of job loss combined with divorce proceedings had reactivated my old obsessive behavioral patterns. I wasn't using anymore, but the hyper-focus, repetitive thought cycles, and paranoid analysis habits my brain had learned were still very much active. The temporary position I accepted while seeking freelance work was as a night shift security operator for a luxury residential complex, $7,000 monthly to sit in the building's security center from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., monitoring 14 cameras streaming live footage. For someone with my technical background, it was relatively straightforward work. The building was completed in 2019, 32 units across 7 floors of modern architecture. The security system represented cutting-edge technology, 4K resolution, night vision, motion detection, audio recording, and cloud backup. Each camera produced recordings with unique timestamps accurate to millisecond precision. The therapist at my treatment center had prescribed a combination of naltrexone and bupropion to help control my obsessive behaviors. Since my health insurance had been terminated along with my employment, these medications were no longer financially feasible. The monthly cost of $4,000 represented more than half my current income. Withdrawal symptoms began within 10 days, electrical sensations in my brain, depressive episodes caused by dopamine deficiency, and most dangerously, the return and intensification of my old obsessive analysis patterns. Under these circumstances, on March 8th at approximately 11:10 p.m., I first observed him on the elevator camera, an elderly man, approximately 65 to 70 years old, wearing a dark business suit and carrying a vintage briefcase. He was ascending to the 4th floor. He made brief eye contact with the camera, as if he knew someone was watching from behind the monitor. Then the elevator doors closed. The digital timestamp showed between 11:08 and 11:12. What disturbed me about this man was that while his movement patterns appeared completely natural, somehow it felt like watching archival footage from years past. The image quality seemed subtly different from other recordings, as if it had been captured from a different time period. The following night, at a similar time, around 11:09, the same man, wearing identical clothing and carrying the same briefcase, entered the elevator, same destination floor. Again, he looked at the camera. I reviewed the recordings. Both videos existed in the system, but there were minor inconsistencies in the timestamps. The motion detection system had triggered in both cases, though signal quality was lower than normal. Since beginning work at this building, I had observed only 3 people moving during night hours: a middle-aged woman on the 6th floor, a young professional on the 3rd floor, and a retired couple on the 5th floor. This elderly man was unknown to any of the residents. This is where my old habits activated. During my methamphetamine use period, I would spend hours analyzing the same thing, developing paranoid theories. Now there was no substance, but the obsessive patterns my brain had learned remained identical. When a similar scene repeated on the 3rd night, I implemented a systematic data collection protocol. Time 11:08, 11:13, range of 3 to 4 minute variation window. Duration 42 to 48 second variability. Target floor 4, consistent. Movement patterns, highly similar but with micro variations. Clothing, dark business suit and leather briefcase, consistent. Camera interaction, approximately 18 to 22 second mark. Looking at lens on the 4th night, analyzing the recordings revealed an anomaly that made me question my technical knowledge. The man was clearly visible ascending in the elevator, but other cameras failed to capture him exiting on the 4th floor. The hallway camera either detected him for an extremely brief moment, or the motion detection system responded with delay. This could have been a system malfunction, but this irregularity occurred only for this specific individual. This seemed like a strange hardware error. But all other activities were being recorded within normal parameters. On the fifth night, I used maximum digital zoom for identification purposes. When I focused on his face, what I observed began to disturb me. The man's facial details could never be rendered in full clarity. Even with 4K resolution cameras, facial features remained consistently blurred. Yet everything else, the elevator's metallic surfaces, clothing textures, even the leather details of his briefcase, appeared crystal clear, as if there were an optical barrier between the camera and his face. On the sixth night, an unexpected development occurred. As the man entered the elevator, he removed a folder from his briefcase and held it toward the camera. There was text on the folder's cover, but resolution was insufficient for reading. On the seventh night, I used all available digital enhancement tools to decipher the folder text. Despite degraded image quality, I could distinguish some letter combinations. R, ARD, H, SED, 1920. I researched the building's management records. Richard Harrison had been this complex's first maintenance supervisor. He worked from 2019 to 2023. He had accommodation rights in the staff quarters on the 4th floor. In November 2023, he died from sudden cardiac arrest. Exactly 4 months ago, Richard Harrison was dead. But every night, around 11:10 p.m., he continued boarding the elevator. On the 8th night, I noticed the presence of a second figure. In the elevator's corner, standing among the shadows, was a second silhouette. This figure was so indistinct I initially thought it was an image error. But when I slowed down and analyzed the recordings, I definitively detected the presence of another human form. This second figure never moved, leaning against the elevator wall, watching Richard. My therapist, Dr. Jennifer's voice echoed in my mind. During post-addiction periods, especially under stress, the brain reactivates old patterns, visual hallucinations, paranoid thoughts. These are natural consequences of dopamine deficiency. But I wasn't seeing hallucinations. I was examining digital recordings. Computer programs don't have hallucinations. On the 9th night, a third silhouette appeared, then a fourth. Each night, more and more shapes materialized in the elevator, all at the same level of indistinctness, all motionless, all watching Richard. By the 11th night, I decided to conduct systematic research. I contacted building management and requested death records for the past 5 years. This wasn't official procedure, but I could access information under the guise of security investigation. The findings shocked me. 2019. Margaret Wells, 76 years old, 2nd floor resident, natural death 2020. Vincent Torres, 43 years old, 6th floor resident, car accident, 2021. Dorothy Kim, 61 years old, 3rd floor resident, cancer 2022. Harold Brooks, 69 years old, 5th floor resident, pneumonia, 2023. Richard Harrison, 67 years old, maintenance supervisor, heart attack, 5 people, exactly matching the number of extra figures I observed in the elevator. On the 12th night, I noticed a detail that truly frightened me. One of the elevator figures, the second silhouette standing in the corner, appeared to be female, a short, elderly woman's silhouette, exactly matching Margaret Wells's description in the apartment records. On the 13th night, I decided to conduct what could only be described as an insane experiment. At the time Richard boarded the elevator, I left the security office and went to the floor where the elevator was located. If this was a real event, I should be able to see him physically. At 11:09, I stood in front of the elevator. The digital display showed the 4th floor. The elevator was upstairs. Then it began descending. 3, 2, 1, ground floor. The doors opened. The elevator was empty. But when I returned to the security office and checked the recordings, at that same time I could clearly see Richard and the other figures. This left me facing 2 possibilities. Either the security system was experiencing serious technical malfunction, or I was undergoing psychological crisis. I called my old group therapy friend Marcus from the treatment center. He had also overcome methamphetamine addiction and experienced similar obsessive symptoms. "Thaddeus, listen to me," he said. "You lost your job. Divorce is happening. Medications are cut off. Your brain is using old defense mechanisms. In the meth days, you'd do the same thing, make connections that weren't there, develop paranoid scenarios, spend hours analyzing the same thing. But Marcus, these are digital recordings. I'm not making this up. You might not be making it up, but you could be misinterpreting. Your brain might be telling you a story that isn't real." On the 14th night, I made a decision. If this situation was psychological, I needed professional help. If it was real, I needed to change my evidence-gathering methodology. I accessed the security system's main server and began examining raw data files. I analyzed metadata from each camera, file sizes, encoding parameters. That's where I discovered the abnormality. The recordings showing Richard had file sizes 12% larger than normal recordings, as if additional data layers had been added to the image. And strangest of all, this extra data was outside the standard formats that camera hardware could produce. Metadata analysis yielded even stranger results. In recordings where Richard appeared, I detected that file size was increasing in real time without timestamp changes, as if the system was receiving data from another source while recording the event. On the 15th night, I also began monitoring the system's network traffic. During the hours Richard boarded the elevator, I detected abnormal data flow in the building's internet connection. Approximately 847 megabytes file transfer was occurring, but this transfer wasn't going to any identifiable IP address. This was technically impossible. Network traffic must have a destination address. On the 16th night, I attempted to capture the transferred files. I temporarily disabled the security system's firewall and began recording all outgoing packets. The results confronted me with a phenomenon I had never encountered in my development career. The transferred data consisted of audio files, high-quality digital audio recordings, and in these audio recordings, I could hear Richard Harrison's voice. He was talking, having conversations with someone, but I couldn't understand who he was talking to because the other voices were at such low frequencies, they couldn't be heard through standard speakers. When I processed the audio files with frequency analysis software, I detected the presence of at least 6 different voices, all from different age groups, all speaking English, but with a very old dialect, like audio recordings from the 1970s. On the 17th night, I focused on decoding the audio recordings. Richard's voice was clearly audible. New operator has arrived, working night shift, someone with a history, understands security systems. Another voice, an elderly woman's voice, responded. This one's different, the others just watched. This one analyzes, investigates. A third voice, middle-aged male, added. He's had the same problems we had. Addiction, obsession, fear of losing control. My hands began trembling as I listened to this conversation. They were talking about me. They knew my treatment history. Richard's voice was heard again. We need to reach him, not like the others. This time we need to invite him. How? Asked the woman's voice. Security camera isn't enough. We need direct communication. On the 18th night, what I had been expecting happened. Instead of boarding the elevator, Richard walked toward the security office door. The hallway cameras followed him, this time clearly, with no image loss. He stopped in front of the security office door and knocked. I was there at that moment, sitting behind the door. I could clearly hear the knocking, but at the same time, I was watching myself on the security camera monitor. I was sitting at the desk, looking at the monitors, appearing completely normal. I was physically experiencing 2 different realities simultaneously, hearing the door knock and hearing nothing at all. Richard knocked 3 times. Then he slowly turned to the security camera, looked directly into the center of the lens, and moved his mouth. It was clearly audible in the audio recording. Thaddeus, it's time for you to talk with us. But what truly terrified me was what happened next. When I looked at my reflection in the monitor screen to see my own face, I saw nothing. No reflection at all, as if I had become as incorporeal as a ghost. And when I checked my phone for the time, the battery showed 23%, the same percentage it had shown for weeks. It never changed, because phones, like people, don't need physical energy when they're no longer part of the physical world. On the 19th night, I conducted a test that revealed the true nature of everything I had been documenting. I called my old group therapy friend Marcus and asked him to come to the security office. Just spend one night reviewing recordings with me, I said. I need a second opinion on system performance. Marcus arrived at 10:45 p.m. He was an experienced software engineer with knowledge of security systems. We sat together in front of the monitors and began waiting. At 11:08, the usual activity began. Richard entered the elevator. Behind him were 5 figures, all in the same clear image quality, all looking at me. Look at that elevator camera, I told Marcus. What do you see? Marcus looked carefully at the screen. Empty elevator. Why? My heart rate accelerated. You see it as empty? Yes, of course. What do you see? That's when I began to grasp a terrible truth. Thaddeus, there's nobody on that screen. We were looking at the same monitor. I could see Richard and the other figures in crystal clarity. Marcus saw none of them. Let's rewind the recordings, I said. Let's review everything from 10 p.m. at fast speed. We went through all the night's recorded footage. I could clearly see Richard's every passage. Marcus saw none of them. Thaddeus, he said seriously, there's nothing unusual in these recordings, just normal apartment life. I took the test protocol one step further. I asked Marcus to copy the same footage to his laptop. We transferred the files via USB and opened them on his computer. On Marcus's laptop, the footage was completely normal. Empty elevator, normal corridors, no abnormalities. When we opened the files on my laptop, I could still see Richard and the others. Marcus still saw nothing. Same file, same computer, same screen, but two different images. This is impossible, I murmured. Marcus grabbed my shoulder. Thaddeus, you're experiencing a serious problem. You need to show this to a specialist. No, wait, let's do one more test. I recorded the footage with my phone and sent it to Marcus via text message. On his phone, the video was completely normal. On my phone, Richard was still there. We were facing a physically impossible situation. The same digital file was producing two different images on two different devices, and the only variable was who was watching the file. The next night, I decided to conduct a more comprehensive test. I set up two cameras. One would record the security monitors, the other would record my face. If I was seeing hallucinations, my eye movements would prove it. When Richard appeared at 11:10, I activated the close-up cameras. The next day I analyzed the recordings. Eye tracking analysis yielded surprising results. My eyes were actually tracking the figures in the elevator. But the strangest thing, my pupil dilation, blinking frequency, and focus patterns all indicated I was watching a real image. Eye movements during hallucinations are different. Pupils dilate, focus becomes impaired, blinking increases. I had none of these symptoms. On the 20th night, I understood the true scope of the situation. This time Richard came all the way to the security office door and knocked. I was sitting behind the door and could clearly hear the knocking sound. On the monitors, I was watching myself, sitting at the desk, working normally, not reacting at all. I was physically experiencing two different experiences simultaneously, hearing the door sound and hearing nothing. After Richard knocked 3 times, he slowly turned to the camera and spoke. "Thaddeus, it's time for direct communication with us now." I opened the door. Nobody was in the hallway, but on the security camera, Richard was standing there talking to me. "You can see us because you're in the same situation as us," he said. "You're becoming part of this system too." "What do you mean? Look at the files on your desk, Thaddeus. How long have you been working here?" I looked at my desk. I opened the shift log book. My first entry date was March 8th. Today, what date was today? I checked my phone. May 20th, 2024. I had been working here for 3 months, but I thought it had only been 3 weeks. "Thaddeus, you started working here 3 months ago. First week you did normal shifts. Second week you started seeing Richard. Third week you started talking to us. No, you do your shift here every night, but when morning comes, you forget the previous night's events. You only remember the moments you first discovered. You keep reliving them over and over." I looked at my phone's call logs. I had called Marcus 3 months ago. Again. I had the same conversation repeatedly. "This is impossible. You died here 3 months ago, Thaddeus. You had a heart attack. In the security office alone during night shift. Stress, medication withdrawal, cardiac complications created by your drug history." I pressed my hand to my chest. My heartbeat, could I feel it? But I talked to Marcus. He saw me. "Marcus visited here 3 months ago. He found you dead. You keep reliving that moment over and over, but each time with a different ending." I went to the security recordings and searched for March 8th night. There, sitting at the desk, was a figure, never moving, just staring at the monitors. Me. I had been sitting in the same position for 3 months. "The security system records us, Thaddeus, but we're no longer physical entities. We're digital imprints, consciousness remnants." "Then why do you appear?" "Because I died in this building. So did you. Now we're both in the same situation, consciousness fragments trapped inside the security system." I looked at the monitor. Richard was still there, looking at me. "Others can't see us because they're alive. Only the dead can see each other." I opened the desk drawer. Inside were shift logs, 3 months of shift logs, all in my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing them. And every day the same note. 11:10 p.m. Richard Harrison observed in elevator. For 3 months, every night I had written the same note. "Thaddeus, you're one of us now. You just need to accept it." I checked my phone one last time. Battery 23%. For 3 months, it never changed, because neither the phone nor I needed physical energy anymore. Richard came to the door. This time he didn't knock. He walked straight in. "Welcome home, Thaddeus." I looked at the security camera recordings one final time. On screen, Richard and I stood together, but I knew others wouldn't be able to see us anymore, because we weren't there anymore. We were part of the system now. Digital consciousness fragments, forever monitoring, forever watching, forever waiting for the next person who would join our eternal night shift. And in 3 months, when the next security operator experiences a cardiac episode in this very chair, we'll be ready to welcome them too. The recordings never lie. They just show different truths to different kinds of observers. The living see empty hallways, the dead see each other, and the system keeps recording, always recording, preserving our digital afterlife frame by frame, night after night, forever. I checked my phone. May 20th, 2024. I had been working here for 3 months, but I thought it had only been 3 weeks. Thaddeus, you started working here 3 months ago. First week you did normal shifts. Second week you started seeing Richard. Third week you started talking to us. No, you do your shift here every night, but when morning comes, you forget the previous night's events. You only remember the moments you first discovered. You keep reliving them over and over. I looked at my phone's call logs. I had called Marcus 3 months ago. Again. I had the same conversation repeatedly. This is impossible. You died here 3 months ago, Thaddeus. You had a heart attack. In the security office alone during night shift. Stress, medication withdrawal, cardiac complications created by your drug history. I pressed my hand to my chest. My heartbeat, could I feel it? But I talked to Marcus. He saw me. Marcus visited here 3 months ago. He found you dead. You keep reliving that moment over and over, but each time with a different ending. I went to the security recordings and searched for March 8th night. There, sitting at the desk, was a figure, never moving, just staring at the monitors. Me. I had been sitting in the same position for 3 months. The security system records us, Thaddeus. But we're no longer physical entities. We're digital imprints, consciousness remnants. Then why do you appear? Because I died in this building. So did you. Now we're both in the same situation. Consciousness fragments trapped inside the security system. I looked at the monitor. Richard was still there, looking at me. Others can't see us because they're alive. Only the dead can see each other. I opened the desk drawer. Inside were shift logs, 3 months of shift logs, all in my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing them. And every day the same note. 11:10 p.m. Richard Harrison observed an elevator. For 3 months, every night I had written the same note. Thaddeus, you're one of us now. You just need to accept it. I checked my phone one last time. Battery 23%. For 3 months, it never changed. Because neither the phone nor I needed physical energy anymore. Richard came to the door. This time he didn't knock. He walked straight in. Welcome home, Thaddeus. I looked at the security camera recordings one final time. On screen, Richard and I stood together. But I knew others wouldn't be able to see us anymore. Because we weren't there anymore. We were part of the system now. Digital consciousness fragments. Forever monitoring. Forever watching. Forever waiting for the next person who would join our eternal night shift. And in 3 months, when the next security operator experiences a cardiac episode in this very chair, we'll be ready to welcome them too. The recordings never lie. They just show different truths to different kinds of observers. The living see empty hallways. The dead see each other. And the system keeps recording, always recording, preserving our digital afterlife frame by frame, night after night, forever. This story depicts the experiences of a person living with schizophrenia. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch more content like this.